You know about Wario Land, the game series that Nintendo forgot about and the series that is dead. We're gonna talk about that today. And no, Wario Land 4 is not on my top spot. So let's watch and see which I think is the best one out of all the Wario platformers we've gotten. Wario Land is strange. It can be, not always, but it can be a little bit of a fever dream. Technically there are 6 Wario Land games, but we're gonna count 7, because we're gonna count in Wario Master of Disguise, a game that I played many years ago, several times through, that I loved back then because I was a kid, where every game was good. So let's start by counting these down from what game I think is the worst to which I think is the best. Here at last I did put Wario Master of Disguise, and there's a good reason for it. It is simply not strong enough in most ways. It is a very weird game, but it is not weird in the good way that Wario Land 4, for example, is. It has a story where Wario wants to become a master thief, and he creates this device that allows him to enter a TV show, and is looking for the Wish Stone. It is kind of a Wario Land game where you can move around, you can dash with his shoulder bash, and you can do this usual platformer stuff you expect. But there are some twists. You can transform into different transformations, not via power-ups, but by drawing on the touch screen, which can sometimes not be very responsive. But I never really had a problem with these transformation methods. It was more so that the game isn't all that fun. It feels a bit bland. The music is very forgettable. The story is nothing interesting. Wario's personality is amazing, to be honest. His dialogue lines are perfectly Wario, but the rest, not very fun. There are also a lot of treasure chests you can find which have the same kind of puzzles in all of them, with a couple of variants throughout the whole game, which gets old pretty fast and is more of a damper on the gameplay than anything else. So the story is boring, but the story is not really important in a Wario game, to be honest. But the gameplay is kind of slow, it is not very engaging, the puzzles aren't all that interesting, the transformation can be sluggish, the game overall feels a bit sluggish. And also the art style, I don't know what it is about it, but it might be the lack of outlines. But it never really resonated with me. I am not a huge fan of the art style of Wario Master of Disguise. At number 6, I put the original, Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3. It's a weird hybrid between a Mario game and a Wario game. This was the first one. It is Super Mario Land 3, but it is Wario as the protagonist, so it was kind of a transitional game from the Super Mario Land games to the Wario Land series. And you can really tell, because it mixes a bit of both. You have the level design, which is more reminiscent of Mario Land. You have an HP system, which was removed in the next 2 sequels. And you have a more typical level structure and an overworld, which is more similar to the Mario Land games. From what I've seen, it is probably one of the best looking games on the original Game Boy. The sprites are honestly quite beautiful. They are very well made. And it is very cool in the sense of what this game left behind, the legacy of this game, which is the rest of the Wario Land series and much of Wario's personality in general. It all started here, but it does feel dated. It doesn't feel like it knows what to do. The level design can feel boring at many times. The movement feels very slow. And of course Wario is supposed to move slower than Mario is, but it is not taken into an advantage like the future games are. Instead, Wario feels very floaty, his jump feels weird, and his speed doesn't really match with the level design, in my opinion, and it makes, you know, gaps to jump over and platforming not nearly as exciting as Mario games. And of course, that's not the point of the first game as well. It focuses more on slow combat than tight platforming. But it is this weird mix of Mario Land style level design that is compromised a bit by having less platforming, more blocks to destroy. But it is a bit sluggish, to be honest. It doesn't feel that oomph. It doesn't have that impact feeling. It is interesting though how it differs from Mario in other ways, in that here coins and treasure are not associated with lives, but instead they are defining what kind of ending you're gonna get. Throughout the game you're gonna get treasure that you can find that are secrets in the levels, which is something you can go for, which is a big plus for this game. And also the coins you build up are all adding up to what kind of ending you will get. If you'll get a small birdhouse, or even an entire planet with his face on it. But I think the game simply doesn't have enough Wario in it. The Wario juice that we all love in the next games that are coming up. It is this weird hybrid, but it is the first one, the first step, where they tiptoed into the water of what a Wario Land game is. And I think they did a good job. But it has aged the most poorly, I think, when it comes to how it feels to play it. This is almost like a Wario Land 1.5, because it follows a lot of the gameplay structure from the first game, but it evolves it a little bit. The graphics are insanely gorgeous. I wish we could get this game in color, because the sprite work is amazing. Wario's sprite has honestly never looked better. Never before, never after. I think this is my favorite pixel Wario sprite we've ever gotten. The level design is fun. It has surprisingly many secrets in it. This game, and it still retains that treasure system from the first game, where there's one major treasure hidden in each level that you can find, which determines what kind of ending you're gonna get. And also potentially unlocking this second quest. But this game is essentially a very solid, short, but very solid package. It feels much better to play. It looks miles better than the first one. It feels like the game design and the level design is just a huge step up from the first game. And it still has that same kind of system that the first one has. For example, that you can gamble with the money that you earn in each level. Do you double it, or do you lose half of it? That's up to you. It is a surprisingly packed little package with content that you should check out if you haven't done so already. It is very short. You can probably beat it in a few hours and do most that the game has to offer. And the second quest is essentially just a slightly more difficult one without really any change in level design at all. So, not all that interesting, but it is something at least. Virtual Boy Wario Land, a strange one that I wish we got remade in color someday, because it deserves it, definitely. Wario Land 2 is where the series started to feel like his own. Wario Land 2 feels quite distinct from the Super Mario Land series. This is where Wario really found his footing. Suddenly we have transformations that are not simply the jet hat and the bull hat and the dragon hat. Now we have proper transformations that are acquired through enemies, which is very unique for the Wario Land series. Wario gets crushed and squeezed and dragged in all kinds of direction, and he turns into springs and is squeezed flat. All kinds of crazy things. This is what really defines the Wario Land games. This quirkiness, this absurd nature of the games. And he's invincible. Quite unique, Wario has no HP in this game, but instead you lose money if you are taking damage. And this game is honestly underrated, I think, because it has branching paths in this Wario Land style gameplay. There is something very exciting about hidden exits, and hidden exits is not something Wario Land 2 invented. But it is something that is unique to Wario Land 2 in the Wario Land series. And money is required in mostly two ways. It is required at the end of the levels in order to spin some panels where you spend coins to flip panels in order to guess a number so you can fill out a map. And the other one is in the levels themselves in order to get the treasure. You can bet more money to get an easier task, or you can spend less money in order to get a more difficult one. in order to get the treasure of the map, of the level. So Wario Land 2 is exciting. It has more of the exploration aspect of Wario Land, where you can break walls everywhere in order to find hidden stashes of coins. And as I said, coins are really the bread and butter of this game. It is something you require and really cannot get enough of. And because of the branching paths you have, suddenly when you do one path and you think that is it, and you realize there are more paths to be found, suddenly you find secret boss fights you didn't know existed. You find different levels and different environments. It is really cool. And Wario Land 2, it is, I think it has aged very well. The only thing I think that I wish was aged a little bit better is just how Wario feels to move around. It is not bad, but it's also not perfect. And I think I just want it to be perfect because the potential of Wario Land 2 is so strong. But Wario Land 2 takes the spot on the list. A good platformer and really the start of what Wario Land would become. Wario Land Shake It, one of the most gorgeous games I have played, but sadly not as fun as I remember. It is a really solid game overall. It feels truly like the successor of Wario Land 4 with the different transformations and how it's used and how you have the whole escape back to the start mechanic, which also Pizza Tower and Anton Blast is using. Shake It also uses that one. And it also has this music disc gallery or this sound test room, which also Wario Land 4 has. Although Wario Land 4 is a bit more interesting in that regard. So Shake It is a weird package because it is gorgeously made. I mean, the visuals are stunning. It is like living in a Wario anime. But it also, at the same time, feels like they played it a bit safe. The game is not as crazy as you would expect a Wario game to be. Mechanics feel safe, level design feels safe, and because this was on the Wii, there are some mechanics that feels a bit tucked on just to play on the whole Wiimote gimmick, you know? That maybe would have been different or maybe not even been there at all if this was on a different console. It's still not as memorable as, for example, Wario Land 4, and it is so hard to put my finger on just why that is. Because the game looks great, it plays solidly, but when I think about the levels of Wario Land 4 versus Shake It, I can remember each and every one of Wario Land 4's. But Shake It, I can remember a few. And that's it. They blend a bit together. And I think that's maybe where the biggest flaw of Shake It lies, in that it doesn't feel distinct enough throughout its levels. It feels very, yeah, as I said, it feels very safe. It doesn't take all that many chances at being crazy, at being more out there, at doing something completely unexpected. And now we arrive at Wario Land 4. This is probably the most famous Wario Land game for many reasons. And it is definitely the most unique one visually. I mean, if you imagine the Wario Land games in your mind, Wario Land 4 is probably the one that's going to stick the most out. Also be the most memorable one. Wario Land 4's presentation is astounding. It is incredible. It is strange and weird and funny and scary and gorgeous and horrifying and creative. All at once. But is it the best one? No, I don't think so, but we'll get back to that. Wario Land 4, I would say, is Shake It's solid gameplay, but 4 actually takes the extra step. It goes the extra mile of having strange characters, strange bosses, having very memorable and catchy and also weird music. It has a design just overall from the very beginning of the game to the bosses, to the level design, to the art style of the enemies, of all of it, that is just weird. It is strange. But man, is it solid. It feels super good to play. Wario moves super smoothly. His attacks feel responsive and great. The game can be tricky. You have clever puzzles, especially in the bonus areas. And the game overall is just fun to play. You have the music that is intense when you escape back to the start. The level changes when you get back to the start or when you run back to the start compared to when you walked to the key that you need to collect. You have collectibles in the game, like the CDs, and you even have a hard mode and a super hard mode, all of which switches around where important key pieces are located in levels. So it is not just that the game gets more difficult when you change difficulty mode, but the levels themselves also change. There are new enemies where they wouldn't appear before. And as I said, the major collectibles are moved around, which makes for a really fresh second and even third playthrough, which is really good. Wario Land 4 is really a complete package. And before we go on to the next one, I quickly want to mention this. This is something I bought for myself that I highly recommend. It is a magnetic ring from Intake Breathing that I bought myself, and I enjoyed it so much that I asked them if I could become a partner with them, and I could. So if you want 15% off, you can use the link on the screen right now or the link in the description. It really, really helps you breathe better because it opens up your airways. I sleep better with this, I work out better with this, I use it every day, essentially. So 15% off a package like this. Use the link in the description or on the screen. Check it out, highly recommend it. Okay, over to the next entry. And finally, we have Wario Land 3. I put this on top, and you might find that strange and say it's some nostalgia stuff going on, but it is not. I don't have nostalgia for the third game because I played it many years after the fourth one. In fact, Wario Land 4 was one of the first games I ever played. It was one of the first games I owned myself. The third game has no correlation with nostalgia for me. So why is it on top? I think Wario Land 3's gameplay is exceptional. It feels like a Metroidvania Wario Land hybrid. And I remember the first time I played it, I was just so surprised by how good it was. Because I didn't really expect much. I had played the second game, I had played the fourth, obviously. And this was a Game Boy Color game. I didn't expect much. I expected it to be a better second game. But what I got was something else entirely. Wario Land 3 is very satisfying to play. You play in essentially an open world, but because of the limitations of the Game Boy, they are split into levels. And what is so fun about Wario Land 3 is that you start with essentially nothing. You start with the shoulder bash, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's all you have. And you quickly realize that the levels feel very short. Extremely short, in fact. But then you start to realize that there is not one ending for each level, there are four. There are four treasure chests, each representing a completion of the level. And you have to find the corresponding key to open that chest. And in those chests, you find treasure that might just be optional, or they change something in the world. Maybe they plant seeds in 2 or 3 different levels you've played long ago. So when you go back, suddenly there are trees that are grown there and you can climb them and reach new areas. Or maybe some treasure teach Wario new moves, like ground pounding, or diving underwater, or jumping higher. And suddenly you can go back to previous levels that originally felt very small and short and realize, oh, I can go up here now, or I can break that block, or I can go down there. And suddenly there's a huge new section in these previous levels you have played and gotten to know because they are so small. It is because, not just because of the Metroidvania elements that allow you to go back to previous areas and explore them more, but it is because the game makes the levels feel so alive. It makes the world feel so alive in this little Game Boy cartridge. And that comes from the immersion of the treasure you find, the day-night cycle, and just the overworld map and how all of it fits into this little music box world that you're playing in. Wario Land 3, it is my favorite Wario Land game, and it is a game you definitely should check out if you haven't done so already.